Welcome to the Team Teach podcast. I'm Claire, and in each episode you'll find me talking with an expert guest to learn more about behaviour. We squeeze a lot into each episode. You'll listen to the latest thinking in behaviour, continue your professional development with our book recommendation, and then I'll send you away with 3 practical tips you can use in your setting. I'm joined today by Nick Burnett. Nick is the Managing Director of Australia and New Zealand and International Director of Coaching for Team Teach. He has over 30 years of experience working in mainstream and special schools as a teacher, senior leader and school principal in both day and residential settings. Nick is also an author, accredited restorative practice facilitator and leadership coach. And today, Nick and I are talking about repairing and restoring relationships. Enjoy the episode. Hi, Nick. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Claire?
I'm really well this morning, and we were just chatting off air that there's quite a time difference between us. I've got hazy dawn kind of sunshine coming in. What time is it with you?
Yeah, it's quarter to 6 in the evening, so we're heading towards sort of sunset fairly soon in Queensland.
Oh, but we've managed to find a suitable-ish time for us both to be able to chat today. And I'm really excited about the topic because I think when we're thinking about Team Teach courses and we're thinking about, you know, those that might done a Team Teach course, the restorative bit can be tricky. So we're thinking about repairing and restoring relationships today. Before we get stuck into the topic, do you mind just giving us a book recommendation?
Yeah, as we're talking about restorative practice, is a bit of self-promotion really, but because one of the key things that came out was how do we do this with individuals who may have additional needs, because it's quite a verbal process in terms of receptive and expressive language. So I partnered with a lovely lady who's world-renowned expert in restorative practices, and we wrote a book called Restorative Practices and Special Needs, approach to supporting young people.
I mean, you're absolutely right, because I delivered the courses quite a bit, and if we don't have the receptive and expressive language to be able to reflect on the things that have happened, it's really tough, isn't it, to help change things, for the better, hopefully, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it was fascinating and not unsurprising once we sort of delved into how do we do this with people who are pre-verbal, and those are some of those early cognitive stages, that there's some amazing practice out there. That's people in special ed are very good at adapting things, and there's lots and lots of great case studies and examples out there. So it's lovely to be able to share even things such as helping explain what the concept of hurt was. We take a lot of things for granted, in many ways, but don't always understand they are hurting someone else. And actually just getting them to helping some young people start to understand what that actually means.
That is fascinating. I know your intention wasn't to sell the book to me, but I'm genuinely like, oh, actually, that would be really, really helpful, some of the bits in there. So I'm definitely going to look it up, because that is, I've worked in special educational needs and people referral units, and those that might have less receptive language, and obviously visuals can be really, really helpful. But you're so right, and so often when I'm delivering training, we might have a school saying, well, we say gentle hands to someone as part of the restorative bit, but I'm always querying that with some individuals that might have less receptive and expressive language and cognition, that what is gentle hands?
Yes, exactly. It's what I often overhear they call kind hands. But again, what does that mean? It's a word at the end of the day, and it's the meaning that sits behind the word that's crucial. And it can be hard to judge, the level of comprehension around the words we use.
Go on, tell us a bit about your experience, Nick, around the topic. That would be great. Yeah.
So it actually was through delivering lots and lots of Team Teach over here, and obviously that listen and learn towards the end of a course. We kept talking about, how do we do this? Listen, link and learn as key bits. And then just someone on a trainer course said, have you heard about restorative practices? This would have been, 10, 12 years ago. And I think I'd vaguely heard about it. And it comes from restorative justice, which from the prison services, etc. But anyway, just fortuitously, literally an hour up the road from me is one of a really, really well-known person who's written about 10 or 12 books on restorative practices, did a TED talk all on restorative practices and her journey around that. And this person put me in touch with her. So we went and had a coffee and just really hit it off. The genesis of how did we end up there was really, let's explore this from I had knowledge and experience and also network of people in special needs. And Mark Thorsburn, the lady's name is, she had that expertise in restorative practices. So it was really just drawing our networks together to pull an idea together. We started with a workshop. We started with a one-day workshop, and out of that flowed the book where we captured, and it looks at a whole range of different sort of special needs that might influence, how accessible or not restorative practice is. Because at its basis, it's very much an expressive and receptive language process. There's a lot of language to process and to share in all that. So I went and did the 3-day facilitator course. Not that I've ever facilitated it, but at least I had a better understanding of what is behind it, as opposed to are they magic words or magic questions, because there aren't no such thing as that. And then it was just gradually sharing it, and I came across it more and more in Australia and in New Zealand. Quite a few schools have taken it on board as a really helpful approach to, again, restoring and repairing relationships. And just because at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. Any sector is in that sense. And what do we do? So it talks about viewing wrongdoing through a relational lens. Harm has been done to people and relationships. And if we don't take the time to try and repair those, then how do we move forward? And the other bit, just I think to share at this point, the other bit that sat well for me within Team Teach was the idea of a script. We already talked about health scripts and health protocols, but here's another version of a script that can be helpful, not only for, as a staff member, what do I say to this young person, but also a young person to have a sense of safety. What's this conversation about? Yes, and so we sort of suggest if people don't have anything in place, here's something that's worth considering. And people across a large range of settings have sort of taken it on board as part of that. What do we do to help restore and repair relationships, including between colleagues, not just with the people that we support.
Yeah, because I think the points there around that, the listening bit and allowing someone to have a voice and to be heard is probably, for me, when I'm doing restorative conversations or practices, that's the most powerful bit. Because often some of the young people that I've worked with actually haven't really been listened to, particularly those that might be excluded from school or those that have communication difficulties, that actually really taking the time to try and understand someone's point of view, even if I don't agree with it whatsoever, it's really powerful. But I sometimes ask really ridiculous questions, Nick. So this might be ridiculous, but I'm really aware of what restorative justice is, and I'm aware of what restorative practices are. But I'm just wondering if you could, for the listeners, just give a bit of a definition of both those things, because they're used interchangeably incorrectly, I think, quite a few times.
They probably are. And look, it can well be different in the UK than it is over here, how it's emerged. The restorative justice, as I say, came out of the criminal space, and hence the word justice. And so there was a deliberate move. So that is, it's basically, in effect, is the same thing over here. But people in schools sort of, balked a bit at the word justice. It sounds very punitive, and everything restorative practice isn't. So that's why there was a real big shift to reframe it, restorative justice, as restorative practice, to make it more, to make a better fit into the schools and caring systems that adopt it. So fundamentally, it's exactly the same process. It comes from the same genesis of how do we, acknowledge the impact we've had relationally when something's not gone well, and as a way of sort of, and some people think it's a soft option, but done well, it most definitely isn't. Particularly if you've got a relationship with a person and you've inadvertently, unfortunately, for whatever reason, caused harm to them, actually hearing them share that obviously is quite confronting to people.
Yeah.
Be confronting. So it's actually done well. It actually is, rather than just, staying behind in detention or whatever else it might be, where you don't see the outcome of it. And that's where it came from. That the idea is, if most people who commit crime, see the people they commit crime against as faceless, so it doesn't really impact which going to steal this, because I don't know the person. Most people don't steal from people they know; they steal from people they don't know, because most people like to be liked, in all of that. So again, building those relationships and acknowledging actually the impact it's had on this other human being, and doing that in a safer space as possible, even because it's about emotion. So as we both know, that can be really, particularly if you've been hurt or harmed or something's happened as a consequence of that. If that's not done well, it can get out of control quite quickly, of course.
Yeah, you need to have someone that is able. I mean, I've done a certificate in counselling course, Nick, so I'm all about holding the space, like holding holding the room. I know that's a bit of a metaphorical term, but it's really key, because I think back to some of the incidences, particularly in the pupil referral units, I think that I've worked in, and once in a blue moon, something really serious will happen, and perhaps a member of staff is involved and potentially gets hurt, like once in a blue moon, not very often. And actually I've seen the power of those restorative processes, but I've seen it on the flip side though, where it's been done not so well and the space hasn't been held, or the member of staff has been forced to have that conversation when they're not ready. And emotionally, and thinking about staff well-being, I mean, that is not my understanding of the process of restorative practices. It's when people are ready. So I think we can get a mixed bag, can't we, from this module?
Absolutely. Look, it is, isn't it? Yeah. And look at, there's a whole continuum from a restorative practice conversation to a full conference, where it has more people and they have a real structure of who speaks, when they speak, and everything else. And the more complex it is, the more you need that sort of extended process. But the challenge around that is people want to do the right thing, but you'll have heard that many times I do the time poor. So unfortunately, they probably use let's have a restorative conversation, where actually it needs more than that, because either the young person or the person being supported, or the staff, or both, neither are ready to have the conversation. There's lots and lots of preparation. That was certainly a key thing that came out of conversations. You shortcut the preparation, it's sort of on a hide into nothing. It's highly likely to go wrong if you don't do that bit right. Of course, people then go, oh, it's just a bit hard. Let's do the quick, just follow the script. The kid learns the script and we move on. But most situations need a bit more than that, unfortunately. But if we don't, as you said, if we don't hold the room, if we don't really listen to people, unfortunately, and I think that's why it's had its ebbs and flows a bit, because it's been implemented poorly, and it ends up making relationships worse because they try to do it. A colleague of mine once said he started work in a school, and they just had this, has the young person been RP'd? As soon as you do something, you're like team teached, isn't it?
We love using it as a verb. We love it.
As soon as you start using it in that way, you've sort of lost the soul of what it is.
Yeah, and it's the heart and soul of what we do as practitioners, because it is about relationships and the relational lens that you've mentioned there. I'm conscious that I've seen the pitfalls, I've seen it done really poorly, but like in your experience, Nick, what is it about the restorative process that makes it work well? What are the kind of conditions? You've talked about preparation already.
Yeah, preparation. I use an overview sort of three words together, but that's the absolute crucial bit. And knowing what's going to help everyone, but help the young person engage in the interaction. So some people, again, we can get lost in, they need to sit still and they need to not fiddle with something. Yeah. But if that helps them, then that doesn't matter in all of that. But again, as an ex-special school ed teacher, teachers at times we can get lost in, there's a certain way to behave. in particular in those sorts of events. But actually what you need is that what's going to help the young person engage with this process, what helps them be as relaxed as possible, because it's confronting.
Yeah.
Particularly if they've got, not that it just happens with people who've got autism, but it can be even more so because of their communication and social challenges you layer onto that. So what needs to be in place for this particular young person that will enable them to take a full part, and how they take part. So got to be flexible. So there's scripts there to frame it. But we saw loads and loads of examples of being really creative and not losing the essence of what restorative practice is. And it's hard to summarize in a short period of time, but it was that really thinking about who are the individuals involved in the incident, how do we give it its best possible chance of a successful outcome. And again, as you said, staff can be forced into having it when they've still got some processing to take place.
And I think that individual approach, which is an essence of any team teach course, for those listening that have accessed the course or are trainers themselves, like that value, treating everyone as an individual, is really the core thread, isn't it, of all of our courses. And it's exactly the same for restorative processes. And I think for me, where it has been unsuccessful, both like for me as a practitioner and things that I've kind of seen in settings, is when it becomes, we're RPing someone and it's a really forced process. In some mainstream schools here, people have kind of been like, RP, this is great, let's get it on board, and it becomes like a sheet that staff have to do in reflection, which is detention, and then the child just learns the questions. Yes, I'm really sorry, yes, I felt really sad, and then they can leave, and you're like, that is not even the essence of what we're trying to do here. And at its worst, I've seen schools completely take away any sort of natural consequences or anything, and replace it with poorly done restorative practices. And then actually you get really some quite chaotic behavior and boundaries really getting pushed. So it's a real minefield, isn't it?
It is, yes. As I say, it sounds simple. It sounds like the right thing to do. But I always talk, when we talk about it on courses, I say, so what's the benefit of having a script? We obviously talk about scripts with the help script, etc. in Team Teach. It keeps people safe. It knows what I'm going to, I've got a sense of what I'm going to say if I'm the person asking the questions. What are the downsides? They learn the answers. What answers it is. I always say it's a bit like, if we notice a pattern around that, it's about having the language to challenge that in a relational way. I share things like, you're saying absolutely all the right things we want to hear, but unfortunately we keep having these conversations. So what can we put in place so you don't have to keep having the conversations? And it's trying to be invitational in drawing attention to behaviour, isn't it, as opposed to confrontational, which can soon fall into. And the same with the questions, it's how you ask the questions, and who's asking the question, and all the other bits that people forget about, and often staff are forgotten because they're back in class, they're back teaching, and so the relational bit happens between the staff counsellor or the deputy head or whoever else is having the conversation with the kid, and not with the most important bit, the staff member back in the classroom.
That needs that rich relationship to help with learning and pastoral things as well. I've written down a word on my notepad that you said before, which was time poor. And I think the most common question that I might get as a trainer is, well, that's great, but we're time poor. What's your thoughts around those kind of questions, and the fact that people are very time poor?
Yeah, look at it. There's no easy answer. I always say that because we just do it if there was an easy answer. But for me, it's about, and this is, if you invest in relationships, and there's numerous ways you can do that. Restorative practice is one way to do it. Then actually, it's about, it's about giving some time now, because it'll save you time, self-time down the road. If we don't get it right, this young person keeps bouncing back. We'll keep having the same conversations. Actually, if we do it, take a bit longer than we probably feel we've got to get it right with them, they're less likely to come back. They're less likely to have the conversation again. I always say that easy to say, harder to do.
Yeah.
But it is about how do we stop this sort of cycle of just same young people keep doing the same thing. Then we've got to think differently. If we keep doing the same things and expect different outcomes, I think it was Einstein said first sign of insanity, isn't it? So what are we as staff going to do differently to try and disrupt those unhelpful patterns? And it does take time, but I've got to say, surely relationships are, what it's all about in environments, in settings that implement team teach and other things. So let's build time to really build those relationships. And that's, it's important for everyone, isn't it? But for some young people, given their background and other things where there's been lots and lots of broken relationships or negative relationships, that special person who will take time and help navigate that with them is crucial.
It is. And I think drawing on some of the things that you mentioned there, as a practitioner, maybe class teacher, support member of staff, or if I work in, care settings, I might just be really front facing. And really it's the decision makers, isn't it, to actually build the time as part of the process? Because otherwise we end up spinning so many plates that it's not possible. But that's food for thought. But I'm terrible, Nick, at overrunning, and I'm really into our conversation. But I wanted to just draw us back to a bit of a summary about what we talked about. 3 top tips, that would be great.
Yeah, one of the key things is, and we always say this on the course, so we talk about it, and someone got it established somehow, and we just say get trained. If you think this is important, go, and there's different levels of training you can access, but we're not training people in it, we're just flagging this could be a useful approach. So do get people trained and think about, there was a key question and some resource about how restorative are you, and getting people, because everyone will say they're restorative until it happens to them, and sometimes they're not quite as restorative as they would like to believe they are. Second one was that learning that it can be accessed by virtually everyone, so it's not just for those young people we support or adults we support who are more verbally adept in terms of receptive and expressive. It can be modified and still retain its core. And the last one is the same, talked about this in terms of time, part of that well-being approach. Relationships, we know, helps with all sorts of, well-being, mental health things if there's key people there. So that investment in time, I would suggest, is well worth it.
Brilliant, Nick. Really, really interesting stuff there. I'll be looking up your book as well, which is exciting for me because, particularly in that area, you can get, some tips would be great. And thanks for your time. Enjoy your evening and we'll chat soon.
Great. Thanks a lot, Claire.
You've been listening to the Team Teach podcast. It's been great to have you here with us as we discuss behaviour, communication, and the ways we can best support those in our care. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.